Shirley Render is one of Canada's foremost aviation historians, and a leader in the stewardship of this country's aviation heritage. Born in 1943 to Dr. and Mrs. Harold Hurst, Shirley was raised in Winnipeg, Manitoba. She earned a BA in 1964 and then began work in social services, part-time teaching, and tutoring. In 1973, Shirley realized her ambition to fly when she earned her pilot's license. She then combined her love for aviation and history in 1977 when she was asked to begin volunteering for the WCAM, the Western Canada Aviation Museum. Shirley was soon involved with every facet of the organization, planning exhibits, writing for its publications, even being asked to sit as a director. All the while, she dug into the early history of Canadian aviators, exploring the museum's archives and interviewing World War I pilots, bush pilots, mechanics, and others to preserve and tell these important stories. When Shirley turned to the history of female pilots, she realized theirs was an overlooked story that needed telling. And so, she undertook a master's degree in history. Her work stood out, and Shirley received important awards to support her project, including a Canada Council grant and an Amelia Earhart Research Grant. Uncovering these women's stories was no easy task. A request to the Department of Transportation for information on early women pilots returned a single list of 100 women licensed between 1928 and 1933. It included only their name, date of license, and license number, not even the name of the province in which they were licensed. Tracking down women who had flown 40 to 50 years earlier, usually under a maiden name, was almost impossible. Ever resourceful, Shirley turned to the media. The Winnipeg Free Press ran a full-page story that caught the attention of the Canadian press as well as Peter Zowski. News of Shirley's search soon reached across the country. Handwritten letters and phone calls, often from the women themselves, began to arrive. Shirley had found her source material. The end result was No Place for a Lady, published in 1992, the first book on the history of Canada's women pilots. Between 1990 and 1999, Shirley entered government, serving as the MLA for St. Vital in the Manitoba legislature. Her appointments included a legislative assistant to Premier Gary Filmon, and later Minister of Consumer and Corporate Affairs. But she also remained engaged in aviation. Although she had stepped down as president of the WCAM's board of directors, Shirley remained the unpaid editor of the museum's magazine. Her book, published 2 years after her election, became a bestseller, and she fit in her speaking engagements outside of her legislative duties. In 1994, Shirley sat on the Canadian International Civil Aviation Organization's committee that commemorated the ICAO's 50th anniversary. On her suggestion, Canada named James A. Richardson as the person who made the most outstanding contribution to civil aviation in a member state. Shirley had first tackled James Richardson and Canadian Airways in her master's work, and she returned to his story for her second book, Double Cross. It was another bestseller that not only returned Richardson to the limelight, but also helped play a part in the renaming of Winnipeg's International Airport as the Winnipeg James Armstrong Richardson International Airport. It was at the WCAM that Shirley continued telling the stories of Canadian aviation on a daily basis. During her time there, she helped the museum grow into a world-class facility at the Winnipeg International Airport, and it was thanks to her that this institution was redesignated as the Royal Aviation Museum of Western Canada. First as a volunteer in the role of director and president of the board, and then as an executive director and curator, she spearheaded many projects, including transforming the newsletter into a quarterly magazine, the development of a curriculum-based educational program, expanded tours, increased fundraising efforts, and the creation of a strong capital campaign team. These and other initiatives ensured the museum's long-term stability, allowing it to fulfill its primary responsibility, sharing Canada's aviation heritage. One of Shirley's proudest moments came in 2005 with the discovery of an open-cockpit Fokker Standard Universal, operated by Richardson's Canadian Airways, that had been lost in 1931 in the exceedingly deep Sharon Lake. As a pilot, legislator, author, curator, and museum director, Shirley has been a mentor and a role model for many young women and men. Retirement has not stopped her from making TV documentaries or from talking about the women in her book. In 2020, a filmmaker contacted her to buy the rights to No Place for a Lady. Shirley has been supported during her varied career by her 2 children, Matthew and Kelly, and their spouses, and her partner Doug Clark. Recognition of her contributions to Canada's aviation heritage are wide and richly deserved, and include being named Director Emeritus of the Royal Aviation Museum of Western Canada and receiving a Nellie McClung 150 Manitoba Women Trailblazer Award, the Prix Manitoba, and the Queen Elizabeth II Diamond Jubilee Medal. For her commitment to the preservation of Canada's aviation heritage and for her contributions to the history of Canadian aviation, Shirley Render was inducted into Canada's Aviation Hall of Fame at ceremonies held in 2022.